Hello, guys. My name is Vipers, or Alex in real life, and welcome to the Game Takes podcast, episode 46. Tonight's topic will be: Can the fighting game community, well, FGC as abbreviated, be
Mhm.
reborn after disaster? That's kind of really exotic title because I have done many podcasts that have kind of talked about the bad side of gaming, just like
Mhm.
Rainbow Six, a lot of bad stuff. So we're gonna go through that because that's been a scene that's been on a decline. And well,
Mhm.
for my case, because I'm not really a specialist and I've been on decline for many years.
Mhm.
So we're gonna let our guest introduce himself, and yeah, we're gonna get through it.
Yeah. So my name is Kyle Gray, also known as Grayola. I am a Smash TO and commentator, focusing on Smash Ultimate. I've done some other things for other games. I've done a little bit for Rivals of Ether. I've done a couple tournaments in Madden. I've done one in Melee, but really focus on Ultimate. Um, and yeah, I focus primarily on event organization, but I kind of do a little bit of everything when it comes to behind the scenes in esports.
Nice. So for the opening, we're gonna before we get to opening topic question, which
Mhm.
give you a heads up for anyone who hasn't watched podcasts before. Topic question doesn't usually relate to like what the main topic questions are. It's just something kind
Mhm.
of maybe something personal on that. So let me go back. So if you guys have watched a podcast in the past, I haven't done a podcast since February. And the reason behind that is college. So I didn't want to do any podcasts where I want to schedule something while I'm dealing with a lot more college work. Though I did do, no, you guys saw me do the podcast in January, February. That was during my second semester at college for my sophomore year. Yeah, I did it during the school time, but I didn't have six classes. So that's
Yeah.
any viewers who were curious about that. So for the opening topic question I got for you is, how did you kind of become the owner of Rise tournaments, or if you
Uh,
were a founder of it?
yeah. So I created Rise tournaments and I created it with the my kind of goal with it is I've been an event organizer doing, larger events for about a year now. So I wanted a brand to have to put to my event. So it wasn't just in the FGC. Sometimes I feel like it's easier if you have a brand to kind of back you up. So I created Rise and it was just for event organization to create cool events. That's the goal of it.
So what year did you start, and how many events have you hosted?
So
As
we started. It was starting to be planned in 2020. I think it was fully announced in February 2021. And under it, we hosted the Rise Champions League, which was a what we call in Smash crew battles, which is basically the best way to describe it for those who aren't familiar is like a team league with 32 different teams that went over a month and had about 400 unique players. And then the other event we did was we partnered with Collision, um, CACT and last on the Pandemic Anniversary Series, which was an event of four different large scale events. Total entrants I think were somewhere around 1,500. So we're new, but it's basically tied to me. Is the whole thing with Rise? It's
so
a brand
what's
behind the name.
so with starting Rise, being a tournament organizer,
Mhm.
there's a lot of tournament organizers in the fighting game scene.
Yeah.
What issues did you want to kind of enlighten on that were problems with other
Mhm.
tournament organizers?
Yeah.
Just say, for example, Evo. Just kind of
Yeah, the one
what's
everyone
yeah.
knows in the sports scene at large. So my main goal was I felt that a lot of times people in Smash they do things just because it's the way they've always been done because they've always worked for that person, and I feel like a lot of times people sell themselves short on innovation and doing things as best as possible because they can do it in a certain way they do it. I think part of that is just because it's easy, but my goal with Rise is to keep innovating, to not just do the same thing, over and over. So that was the main goal behind Rise. I don't I disagreed with how some major organizations were doing it. So I'm like, okay, let me make sure I keep innovating. Let me make sure I'm putting the community first. Those are my main two goals. I think sometimes orgs fall flat on.
Also, last question is, before we kind of get to the main one,
Mhm.
have any tournaments planned for the future in the upcoming
Um,
months?
Nothing I can disclose publicly. But because I mean, yeah, always constantly, I'm always working on 3 or 4 big projects and getting them ready for public release. I just finished a pretty big cycle with Rise Champions League and the Pandemic Anniversary series. So I'm in between cycles right now, but yeah, nothing I can disclose publicly, but yeah, always.
It's coming. So.
Yeah.
So we're gonna get to the main topic questions.
Hmm.
As again, the topic is, can the FGC community be reborn
Yeah.
after disaster? So the first question I have for you is, what reasons do you believe? I wrote this a long time ago because I think
Hmm.
I was supposed to have esports players who can be in the fighting community on this, but I
Yeah.
changed it up. So what reasons do you believe? Just say you're competitor in this situation,
Yeah.
as a competitor, for why Nintendo and other fighting game companies, kind of we specialize that, haven't
Hmm.
shown support for the esports scene, unlike other esports scenes. Although although the passion is always there for the FGC community scene.
Yeah. Um, well, it's been in recent months, it's been shown that Nintendo's actually directly interfered with other companies coming into the scene. Anytime a large organization, I believe ESL is the most prominent example, has tried to come in, Nintendo says, "Hey, we have a circuit planned. We have this. We don't want you to do that because it's going to step on our toes," and then they just never follow through on their actual event. That's been shown. As to why Nintendo does that, it's the unfortunate reality is it's your guess is as good as mine. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Um, the only explanation is that Nintendo and Sakurai, the creator of Smash, Masahiro Sakurai, in the past has said that the way the community plays it competitively isn't the way that they intend the game to be played. So that's the only real inkling that we have to go off of. But they don't support the scene because they know that they don't have to. It's still gonna grow, and the scene brings financial benefits to them without them having to put in any work.
This is kind of prominent with other kind of game series.
Mhm.
This is also with kind of other esports too.
Yeah.
As maybe an example, I have this. It's not kind of relating to fighting games, but a lot of your fighting game communities kind of have issues with that.
Mhm.
Um, Valve, with CS:GO and Dota, they usually don't really, either A, they supply too many tournaments, or B, they don't
Mhm.
even show support. And that's
Yeah.
although those games have been really successful.
Mhm.
As CS, well, actually, I got a future topic planned regarding CS:GO, but we're not going to kind of go further than that.
Mhm.
So the second question: has the small tournament prize pools, although other esports have reached millions of dollars before, make people quit fighting games, knowing that it won't help support their basic needs?
No, I wouldn't say so. I've never seen someone say, "Oh, this I can't play because this isn't supporting me," or they go to a different game. Because the thing is, the Smash community and the FGC at large is completely supported by passion. It exists through sheer power of will and nothing else. So I think there's an argument to be made that it caused some people to maybe not get into the scene who may have wanted to. But no, I wouldn't say so. I think part of it comes from the fact that Smash specifically and fighting games in general are games you play since you were a kid. So the people playing it for years and years, it's just they love the game. It's not so much as like these games are usually continuations
Oh,
of like
it's
previous
the
series.
nostalgia because
Yeah.
that's stuck. What, what is it? Just kind of one thing I have is what reason, other reasons besides that, kind of with the lack of prize pools, is it kind of, do you kind of notice why it's small?
Why
Like,
it's the prize pools are small? It's because I think it's because it's very grassroots. And one of my colleagues once described the Smash community as the final boss of esports because it is so incredibly difficult to get everything right because we have a long history of no uniformity. And now that we have that history of grassroots, people aren't really willing to let corporations come in as much. I think people are suspicious of it to a certain degree.
oh,
I just think the whole kind of mentality isn't really conducive to because these major corporations don't really see a benefit because yeah, Smash gets a lot of players, but you're not gonna there's not really as much room for online events due to how particular fighting game players are with netcode. So you can't reach the heights that big events like other games. I think Fortnite's the most prominent example of massive prize pools because you can all do those qualifiers online, then go to an offline LAN. For an event to have legitimacy in the Smash community, it needs to be all offline, which I think is another inhibitor.
Oh, I didn't notice that. I didn't feel like you do actually those fighting games online. It doesn't seem like there's gonna be like the quality of the game's not really that high unless you do probably Mortal Kombat,
Yeah, well,
which
it depends on what the net code looks like. So there's, without getting into it too much, because there could be an entire podcast just on fighting game net code. There's delay-based net code, which is what Ultimate has, which isn't as good. It has a lot of flaws, and then there's rollback net code, which is it kind of auto corrects itself, and which is like what people like best. And very few games have rollback net code, and without rollback, the game feels completely different. So people are the community doesn't treat it as like a legitimate source.
so just say for example you were competing and you're pretty passionate about like just say you were competing as kind of a competitor, you done these the prize pools. Would you quit? Would you kind of just retire and go to a different esports scene just because of lack of prize pools, or we just still compete no matter what?
So I compete sometimes when there was offline events. It's not really a factor for me, personally. And there's very few people I know who I'll say straight up, I've never seen someone say I'm quitting it because the prize pools are too small. I've never seen that been said.
Oh, just curious because
Yeah.
it might be a
Mhm.
concern for a lot of communities.
Yeah.
So next question. With the nature of 1v1 competition, it tends to be very intense to the point that it involves verbal and physical confrontation that you can't turn around from. Has this somewhat toxic, well, I'm not going to say, I don't know if you really consider it toxic. Well, it's kind of
Mhm.
toxic environment been helpful or harmful to the fighting game community esport?
Well, I'm going to go for the cop out answer here and say both, and I'll explain why. So when it comes to the harmful elements, you're right in saying toxic, and it's created a very confrontational environment. People are at each other's throats sometimes. Not so much offline because I mean, we I don't think it's crazy to say that people are more aggressive on the internet than they are in person. That's just a known kind of fact. So it's the offline scenes are usually very welcoming. Yes, there are incidents where people, are
There's a lot of
toxic to
beef.
their opponents. Yeah, but I wouldn't say as much in Smash. I've seen it more in FGC. There's more prominent examples. In Smash, the worst I've seen is like someone will like not fist bump or shake your hand and everyone will talk about it. Like it's really not that toxic offline. Online, yeah, people can get pretty intense. I've been running a lot of tournaments in the last year. Slurs are thrown, obscenities, people being told to commit suicide.
Ooh.
It can get bad. Offline though, it's not really an issue, but it's the whole keyboard element. So that's one of the major downsides, right? On a positive aspect, it's created a lot of really good storylines. Specifically in Melee, I will say, these beefs, when they're kept friendly, are incredibly interesting for the spectator because it creates a narrative. And that's one of the things Smash does best. So I would say it's been in the past year or so, it's been more harmful. In the overall history of the game and the community, it's been helpful. But I will say in the short term, definitely more harmful. But I mean, that's just kind of the nature of online communities in general. And I don't know
Any
what you can
esports
do.
game you're gonna expect, any game you play, you're
Yeah.
probably gonna expect it. I was just I think like the 1v1 competitions are kind of funny just seeing like especially
Mhm.
any esports in that PC base, like kind of what defining community is. Gears of
Mhm.
War is a good example of it. Call of
Mhm.
Duty, just the trash talk because and
Yeah.
it's different when you play
There,
like Valorant, CS:GO, no one's trash talking each other like constantly.
yeah. There's a little bit of trash talk in the fighting game community. I would say that actually there's quite a bit, but it's usually friendly, I would argue. Like very rarely is it someone if someone's trash talking, it's very rarely too harsh. And if it is, it's just we settle them with money matches usually.
Oh, so what was so you competed? Have you got like sworn on like often?
No,
Oh wow.
that's what I'm saying. It's not that because I didn't really compete that much online. Online, there's some toxicity. There's some people have had to be banned for toxicity, but offline, no, it really isn't that much of an issue. Everyone's kind of homies.
Oh, just curious. So next question is, as there are many rivalries in sports slash esports, there are rivalries in the FG fighting game community which have made the scene you talked about already, which made the
Mhm,
scene exciting to watch some of the time. How has the implication of rivalries helped the somewhat struggling esport in the past and present?
mhm. Um, I would say it generally. I would say it generally helps. I think it keeps people. I One example I'll cite is in Super Smash Brothers Melee from 2017 to 2018. There's two players on the top of the game. That was Armada and Hungrybox. They were in almost every single grand finals for a 2 year period, and people got bored of it because it's the same people over and over and over and over. Different one rivalry is not going to host up the scene. When you have a mix of rivalries, when you be like, okay, then you'll introduce this player named Mango, you'll introduce this player named Leffen. You know, these different
Yeah, I
kind
heard
of
of
players.
laughing. He's crazy.
Everyone's heard of Leffen. He's the most vocal. He's been in if we're talking about rivalries, he's been part of his fair share. Usually, he's an interesting character, and I think healthy for the scene overall, though, because he drives a lot of the discourse. But I would say rivalries keep the scene alive as long as it's not. It can't be overpowering, right? It can't become the whole esport because once the entire game is just these two players against each other, people get bored real quick.
Oh, I know there's a lot of them in that, and that's I think there's one. I remember I think it was a YouTube video. Just Cape. There's like the actually real life beef too. It affected in and out of game. It's like yeah, you mentioned that some of them are homies outside the game. Like
Yeah.
there's I think it was K. I don't know who was K Brad versus I don't remember. It was I think it was in the E League,
Mhm.
and it was like he doesn't like him in and out of game. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. At least it's something that's personal as long as it
Yeah.
doesn't kind of get to again really
Mhm.
personal where it's just like affecting the mental aspect. But
Yeah.
next question. Do you believe that without the personalities of Sonic, these are not kind of melee, a lot of them are going to not be melee here, but I have a list. Sonic Fox, Hungrybox, Punk, Leffen, Taquito, I, Justin Wong, and many
Yeah.
more. This will the scene this and wait, I gotta read this question. Do you believe that without the personalities of Sonic Fox, Hungry Box, Punk, Leffen, Taquito, Justin Wong, and many more, will the scene be dead?
No, I don't think so. There's always gonna be someone else.
Especially with
There's
the recent history.
Yeah. I also want to make at this point, I don't really agree with the analysis the scene is dead. I understand. I think I can understand
No,
other
I'm
esports.
not mean dead. It's like will
No,
it not
yeah.
return? Yeah.
I'm gonna give an example. There is this event coming up offline. It's gonna be the first offline event, right? And it's in Florida where vaccines cannot be required, and it's gonna be in June. And people rush to get a part of this event. It already has 335 entrants with a month left to register. So the scene is very much still. I think outside of those events, it gave a brief lull, but we were still hitting thousands of entrants. So I think the scene's still doing very well. As to answer the question specifically, no, I don't think so at all. I think the scene when a scene is built on so much passion and drive, there's always going to be someone else who wants to be the best. That's what most of these players have in
You
common.
got any examples of like kind of up and comers who's kind of growing their fan base through the F
Yeah,
like
yeah. Wadi is one. And then some ultimate players. There was Nairo, who is now been unbanned from the scene, but not from Twitch, so he won't be allowed to compete because we obviously
we're gonna
you're
talk about them later, but yeah.
yeah, banned players are not allowed to be on Twitch streams, as some of you may know. Um, I think Wadi, Nairo, Mars are all examples of really great content creators, but more importantly, competitors who have a lot of passionate fans. And also, scenes just kind of scenes build up their idols. And what by that I mean, each individual scene kind of has their people, like their best, and they support them. And from that, they are able to grow their kind of network and their fan base. So yeah, I think there's always gonna be someone else. As long as the passion's there, there's always gonna be another person.
I'm just curious. From the ones I list, Sonic Fox, Hungry Box, Punk, Leffen, Taquito, Justin Wong. Probably just I don't know. I just look. I knew those names, but I didn't. I mean, I got many more on there too. Which one do you think plays the most impact to the overall fighting games as a
Overall
personality
fighting games, I
in
would say
this?
Sonic Fox,
I was
without a doubt in my mind.
why so?
Because Sonic Fox is he he transcends the fighting game genre. He's known outside of it. He is also one of the only other personalities here are pushing social issues, but he is putting at the forefront of his kind of identity, and he's able to make a difference beyond just fighting games, and people are able to recognize that. The rest of these people try to impact their scenes individually, but I think Sonic Fox is the one who focused on the FGC as a whole the most.
So yeah, I'm actually going to talk about my next question. So we have uh, seen a very diverse landscape in FGC from furries in a player like Sonic Fox, players from various and unique countries like Dominican Republic and Bahrain, as to cosplayers of all kinds showing up to each tournament. How has this diversity been influential and harmful to the FGC scene?
So I would say it hasn't been harmful whatsoever. I think diversity is very key for any community. I think we're starting to realize as a society, we're starting to realize diversity is necessary to make sure everyone's voice is heard. In terms of influential, most of our biggest players are people who are celebrating and showing this diversity. And what this diversity does is it allows, when trying to make very important decisions, having those diverse voices and not just focusing on one population is really important. Because if we were to appeal just to one group, then we would alienate the rest of the community. I think diversity just kind of gives the fuller picture of how to make it inclusive to everyone, and also how to get more people into the scene. Honestly, if we had it just to appeal to one certain type of person, then I think that's the situation in which the scene would die. It just wouldn't. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, I was just curious on that. I feel like it's a
Mhm.
big help for a scene like that,
Yeah, I think
especially
diversity in
with
esports is the way forward.
yes, I think especially in the FGC community where where you're not gonna see a furry kind of like actually no, you're not gonna see a guy in like a fox costume show up to a CS:GO tournament because that's gonna get a lot of backlash.
Yeah,
Like Sonic Fox or maybe kind of you look at
yeah. I think
Dominican Republic and Bahrain, Dominican Republic who does not really if we go probably up like have a lot of money. Well, they probably have a lot of money, but just not really enough to kind of support esports players. It's like big help to kind
yeah.
of
I
have
mean, there's
people.
also traveling opportunities.
Yeah.
I think the diversity aspect comes down to the fact that Smash and FGC is a very individualistic scene. We're not focused on teams usually. Like players would be signed to teams, but they're signed as themselves as individuals. So I think that's kind of why that's why it is as well, because Sonic Fox can be himself. He doesn't have to worry about what his teammates are doing. He can just be himself to his to sorry, I misgendered there, be themselves to their fullest.
Yep. So we're gonna kind of go more into the bad side now. So Joey Kular Color,
Yeah.
the former president of Evo, got placed on
Mhm.
administrative leave due to sexual misconduct case that happened 10 to 20 years in the past.
Mhm.
Other this is a long rank question. Other sexual misconduct cases got brought up along with it in the upcoming weeks. This was I think last year or 2 years ago.
Mhm.
Um, so if you kind of know any information, describe some of the other cases that occurred during the
Mhm.
history of the fighting game scene that kind of caused,
Yeah.
especially with the sexual misconduct and stuff.
Yeah. This is a very loaded section. So
Kind of
I'm
explain
just
the Joey Color situation first, if you kind of know it, or you can.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with it. From what I understand, there was aspects of sexual misconduct, and he was placed on administrative leave. People are unsure if he's going to be working with Evo going forward or not, because at first it looked just like a temporary slap on the wrist. Um, but what he did is not uncommon. Um, let's let's talk about last June slash early July. There was a huge kind of, I would call it a day of reckoning for the Smash and FGC scene. Literally tons of the biggest voices, personalities. Just, I mean, it goes from people like Zero, who's the former number one in Smash 4 and one of the biggest kind of ambassadors for the scene, to just smaller organizers. There's an organizer named Remo in Texas who was the biggest person in Dallas. There was Eduardo in New England, where I am, the biggest organizer there. And what ended up happening was people would just, these cases range from grooming to pedophilia to sexual assault to sexual harassment. And there is a ban list on Smash GG, and it has, I think, around 250 names just for Smash scene that are banned. And these are all cases of, um, I mean, the cases vary. Some are, racism, homophobia, transphobia, um, the sexual misconduct cases I talked about, um, physical harm, stealing, etc.
Yeah.
So it covers a whole wide range. A couple of the most important cases I would say was Zero, where he was found to have been basically like sexually flirting with a minor while knowing she was a minor. Um, there was the case with Keitaro, where he had sexual intercourse with a 16-year-old. I think he was in his late 20s at the time. Um, there was also the anti situation, though that's been called into question now. But the original interpretation of the situation is that anti had sex with a 15-year-old while knowing she was 15, and I got her drunk as well.
So one
Um,
thing I want to ask about so we're gonna kind of talk more about the sexual misconduct later
mhm,
on, next question, but kind of
mhm.
what am I trying to say here? How come these cases kind of take forever? Because these were, as kind
Yeah.
of you look at it, these were like 2 to 3 years in the past. With Joey Color, that was 10 to 20 years. How come it takes forever to get the evidence out? Although once it
Um,
happens, it should. Do you think it should be released immediately, or should you just get more evidence?
it shouldn't be released immediately, because sometimes when you're going through the process, there might be four or five different like versions of the truth that's released, because we don't know what happened at first. Another aspect of it is that victims don't always feel comfortable releasing their story. Um, they just don't. And eventually they might get the courage to. There's probably some victims that just never have found the courage to say anything. So that's a big block. And then you have to go about doing it right. If there's legal obstacles that need to be taken, you need to be careful of those, because the last thing the scene needs is for prominent TOs to be sued for trying to help out someone in the community. So you have to be careful in making sure making sure it's all done correctly. If this were released to the public, people get scrutinized immediately. You could end up falsely accusing someone if you're not careful. And I think it's just safe to play due diligence when playing with people's livelihoods.
I honestly think I know this is probably different. I get it's probably good to get as much evidence as possible, but I think just I get the lawsuits. You don't want to just don't want anything to go bad, but
Yeah,
I think just if you can try to be honest immediately, I think it could work. Although it's not going to work a lot of times
yeah.
because not everybody's it's not deep in story. It just kind of it's like maybe one
Mhm.
moment. A lot of it does have backstory, but just like for
Yeah.
example, the sexual misconduct case and with Zero with the minor, yeah, that should just be reported immediately. You don't need like a wait 2 to 3 years for that to happen.
Well, yeah, that was an example. That example specifically is when the victim didn't say it publicly. I don't think the victim's name or person for that was ever revealed. It went through another source. people say these things to their friends and they become rumors within the scene, but the victim doesn't feel comfortable with them being said. That's the main thing. The other aspect of it is I mentioned the anti-story, and that's kind of, there's some people who think yes, he's still definitely guilty. There's some people who think okay, there's no way he's guilty right now, and so that's kind of an ongoing debate. And if that was kept private, maybe it could have been discussed. I honestly don't know. It really depends on an individual level. And even with anti, while I personally think that he's guilty, and we did the due diligence for it, we still have to be careful when playing with people's lives. We can't just do whatever we want. We have to be as fair as possible to every party involved.
Yeah, because it's going to be a lot of hate on one side and another, and that
Yeah,
it could be directed towards the wrong way.
Because it's not just, for some people it's okay, you can't go to Smash tournaments. For some people it's okay, now your career as a content creator is completely tanked and you have this on a criminal record potentially.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful while also being just to the victims.
We're gonna before we get into the next question, which is still going to continue on sexual misconduct. Did you know any other cases, kind of like controversies, that happen with players, organizers during the fighting game history that doesn't relate to sexual stuff, or do you not? Any top of your head?
What do you mean conflicts? Just like,
Any controversy? Just how am I trying to say this?
are you saying like beefs or like real world issues?
Kind of real world issues with that. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't think of the person's name now. There
That's
is
fine.
a literally, I would call it FGC folklore is the best way to put it, of I want to say it's a New Jersey player bringing a katana to a gas station and like slashing someone's tires.
That's not much, but yeah, that could be interesting.
But there's anything that happens, it's like, honestly, a lot of it's just been sexual misconduct and personal beefs where people are like at each other's throats.
Oh, I'm just curious on that
From what
one.
I'm aware of.
Just curious. I thought there would be more about
No,
it, but
it's if it, I'm sure there is stuff, but it's
I'm actually
relatively
one thing I
under
want to
lock and
ask.
key.
Like, do you like
Mhm.
at these Smash? There's a lot of esports tournaments that have
Yeah.
security. Just for example, any Call of Duty League, CS:GO, the
Mhm.
Valorant. Well, I'm not gonna probably have in Iceland, but like
Yeah.
all these esports teams, they kind of have security guards at these venues. Like, does
Mhm.
FG's like any fighting game like tournaments have security guards? Just like
Yeah, there are security guards for the to get into the event, but I at the last major I went to, which was Let's Make Big Moves, it's the only really major I went to actually. There's one security guard at the gate. That's it. There is security at these events, but it's not, there's no, what you'll find actually see is there's no uniformity. We don't have a governing body. We're just a bunch of people who like playing games, and some of us end up doing what I do. Some just play the game. So like, there's no real uniformity to it. It has its benefits. It also has its kind of drawbacks.
actually go on that uniformity question since I didn't put on there. Do you
Mhm.
think there needs to be kind of a would you fuck like you think there needs to be a governing body for the FGC community right now?
I think that the FGC would benefit from it. I don't think it will ever truly exist. There's been attempts back in June/July. There was a FGC Discord that was created with TOs from every single scene. I was part of it. I think I ended up leaving it eventually, where they tried to draft a universal code of conduct. But the FGC isn't just the majors. It's not, and it's not just your Evos, your CEOs, your combo breakers. It's also that 20-person local down your street. So having that complete uniformity is very, very difficult because you're relying on everyone to follow it, and that's not feasible. But if in a world where it could be created, yeah, it would really help the scene at large.
Just I don't know how much you keep up with other esports, but just say the FGC kind of wants to follow what format from other esports, just say maybe Rainbow Six, Call of Duty, CS:GO, Valorant, do you think will work best with FGC, or is it kind of just do these open brackets tournaments?
It would have to be it would have to be on a game by game basis, I think. I think open brackets have I don't know as much about other esports scenes, but I'll basically describe what I think is the best system if we're going to do like kind of formalized league. I think a circuit of some type is the best way to do it, where you have events. I think the way kind of Tekken does it, maybe, where you have events with different point systems, and then that gets you ranked on leaderboards, and a certain X amount of people qualify to the finals. I think if there could be a system like that for more games, I think that's the best way to do it. I don't think a straight up league will ever work like Valorant does it, where, or I guess not Valorant, where there's a season. I guess Overwatch League or
Yeah.
COD Pro League, where you have matches in a season. I don't think that would really work for the FGC personally.
Just do the open bracket tournaments. You do good at them. You get some points, and then at the end of the
Yeah.
season, like just say the top 8 players, you qualify to the finals, and that's where the big prizes. That's a pretty good. I like that format. It's kind of hard to do with 1v1 games. I think it's easier to do with like team-based games, like with kind of like what the other formats are. But I think I think it's got to do open bracket. So now we're gonna get back into the sexual misconduct question again. What reasons do you think the FGC fighting game community experienced such a high number of sexual misconduct cases, unlike other esports?
So this is a loaded question as well. So I think part of it is that the FGC is not a place with a lot of oversight. We are, like I said, we're just a bunch of people, and because of that, there's no one really controlling anything. So once it got out, everything got out. I think in reality, cases like this probably happen in every single community, but because there's no oversight in the FGC, no one is really scared of getting their information out there after once the ball's rolling, like once there's some precedent. I mean, we saw it with the Me Too movement as well. It's the same kind of thing. Once the ball gets rolling, it really gets rolling. I just think in other scenes, I think it could happen eventually, to be honest with you. But I think the lack of oversight in the FGC community made it more of a community and grassroots effort. You'll see. I mean, that's the theme of the FGC in general, right?
What actually, maybe not talking about the number of cases, but how come these players are? I don't know. This is going to be a really tough question for anyone. How come these players? What did the? I don't know why I want to say this without trying to get kind of trash topic harmed by community, but what is there common, like what is first thing, what is kind of the ages that you kind of see these FGC tournaments?
Yeah. So that's the difficult part.
For players,
it can range. I mean, there's events where you see like a 9-year-old kid entering with his dad there. And then there's also things where you'll see like a 30-year-old dude. There's no age restrictions. They're starting to be put into effect because after the events of last June and July, we want to be careful now. And, there's starting to be more age restrictions, but the most common, what you'll see is anywhere from the 15 to like 22, 23 age range. That's your prime demographic.
Yeah.
Teenagers, early 20s. Obviously, there's a good amount of people in their 20s. There's some people even in their 30s. There's some kids, 13, 14, but your primary age demographic is like high school and college.
Also, how come, like with these sexual cases, you saw with the 0, 29 to 60, there's not a lot of, I don't know how many female competitors there are in the fighting game scene. How come
they're not? And that's a big issue.
That's just kind of shocking to hear that, because it's like, it's not a game. I don't think you can kind of compare with other games. Like if I don't know the population, you know a little bit more about it, but I feel like fighting games are like more enrailed towards the male side. And I don't know how it gets, how these players get. I'm just shocked by that one, because it's not like Call of Duty, Valorant, maybe like other games where it's just kind of, you do have a decent amount of females who play it, and then it's going to be majority guys. That's how it's going to go.
Yeah.
But the FGC, I just feels like it's like a male dominated. He's like really
100%.
And
The
it's
scene has
just
not historically been welcoming towards women. That's one of the things that, you know, community leaders, figureheads, whatever you want to call them, that's one of the things that we're working on right now, because women, honest, non-male, not even just women, non-male competitors have long been ignored in the FGC, and kind of the, there's blends of misogyny, homophobia, etc. So that's the big issue. I think there's certain females in the scene who are kind of trying to push for more acceptance and better representation. I think Superhero Cows is a good example of that. Vicky Kitty is a good example of another prominent female figure. But we should I want to get to the point where I'm not mentioning prominent female figures because they're just
yeah,
prominent figures.
yeah.
I want to get to that point, but we're not at that point yet. And historically, we haven't been, because it was a boys' club. That's just the way it was. But we're active. Me and some other are actively trying to change that to make it welcoming for all, regardless of your identity, really.
Actually, one more thing before we get to the next question, which is not going to relate to sexual. Actually, no, I want to add on to the sexual misconduct cases. This,
Yeah.
as long as this is other problem esports to kind of talk about. As this was kind of previous question too. Before I get to the last point of. Actually, no. Let me get to the last point of that question. You don't have to. I don't think I want you. You can answer if you want to, but I don't want you to put it at your own will, because I don't want any backlash. Why are the guys interested in this activity, especially in FGC community, where they want to sexually misconduct people? Is it just due to that is it just due to that really dominance, or is it just some other factor?
It's, I mean,
Actually, one more thing I want to add. There's a lot of female characters in the games. Is that played a fact too?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Let me put it this way. I think a lot of I don't think it's, I think it's opportunity, right? A lot of the sexual misconduct is not, it's not a grown man against someone else, or a grown woman against someone else, or whatever. A lot of it has been issues of grooming, issues of straight up pedophilia, because that is because the ages are mixing so greatly. And I would say the reason all of this happens is due to opportunity, because in the past, like I said, there's not a lot of oversight in the FGC, because there's just so many of us to go around. Like, we can only, the figureheads, we're doing our best, but we're understaffed. We're not, no one's really paid to do this. Like in esports organizations, you'll have someone who's your, like, say you're running something for Valorant, there's a specific team for Riot, right? They have someone whose their job is to run this event, their job is to manage oversight, maybe someone's job is HR. We're all doing everything. We're on a volunteer basis, so there's just not, we're understaffed and we can't be everywhere. We're doing our best to address that going forward, but I think that's all it is. It's a huge scene that's not regulated as tightly as it should be, because there's just not enough people to go around.
Actually, so yeah, that's got to be right about there. It's just kind of the lack of organization. But actually, this is kind of tied about the previous question with the cases too, or just kind of explain two more, but it doesn't relate to this esport. Kind of in the recent months, Sinatra and Cleo, you kind of, especially with the Valorant, that's before a big tournament, and also a Rainbow Six coach by the name of Gig, and some other streamer, I forgot the name. I think Southern Annie or something like that. But those are two other cases. So it's been coming up, and even with the 9 online, and these have been over like a year or two old. So so now getting away from that really controversial topic, with LAN events being non-existent in 2020 due to COVID-19, and with the horrors that happened within the fighting game community, I sorry for saying that. I know it's not a good word to say, especially you're so involved in it, but I gotta be honest there. During the with the horrors that happened within the fighting game community during the summer, what do you believe the LAN numbers will be as compared to like a couple years ago?
I think they'll be high. I think when it comes to numbers, I'm honestly, I think it's, so on one hand, some people don't feel comfortable going to events anymore. Some people are out of the scene. et cetera, et cetera. Um, but other people just will come through, like because of COVID, we've had a lot of big events, a lot of online events, and the online scene is actually pretty big. You don't love it, but it's actually pretty large in
Can you
terms
give
of
me
the
numbers
amount.
on that?
The biggest event was 8,000. I think it was just short of eight. I think it was like 8,150, something like that. There
Nice.
was a slew of 1K plus events.
Is that
So
the average numbers for events? Just say like the
um
big ones.
for the big events, I would say somewhere between anywhere from like
We're not talking
700
about
to
competitors
1,000.
only. We're talking about competitors and kind of fans who watch.
Oh, I'm talking about just competitors.
Yeah, we can go with that too. We can do
Because
both sides.
if we're talking about average viewer numbers, I would say for a big event, somewhere between 1 and 2K. So the viewer numbers aren't good. They're way, way, way down. We used to get, I don't know, probably like somewhere between like 20 and 30 for the big events for offline stuff.
Mhm.
But in terms of competitors are actually higher because everyone can get to an event now. That was an obstacle in the past. Not everyone can get there. So I would say when we're coming back, I would expect events aren't going to be as big at first, but that's because of COVID, not because of the situation in the community. I would say our average numbers at the first couple of events are probably going to be somewhere around 400 or 500. I think we'll eventually get back up to those same super major numbers, if not larger. I think the FGC can only grow from here. I'm going to be honest. I'm optimistic, cautiously, because I
Yeah,
know we have
yeah.
work
No.
to do.
You
But
always got to be optimistic about your scene.
yeah,
Esports, every scene will grow over time. Well,
yeah.
some
I
might
mean, it's also
not,
just
but
based on numbers. Like I said, there's this event at AffinityCon. It is already at 335. It was meant to be a small event. The host originally didn't want any bigger than 64 entrants. That's what it was designed as.
it's really over. That's 5 times
Well, now,
already.
well, now it's turning
I just
into
got to be happy
now
about
it's
that.
turning into a national. Yeah. So it really depends. But I think looking at the numbers, looking at what I know, looking at how excited people are, I can only assume it's going to get back to where it was.
I expect it too because I think everybody just wants to get back to kind of being together. As just want to be human again because being locked inside has kind of caused mental problems, especially for these esports players overall. Just actually, let's speak on the mental. How has COVID affected your mental health? Is it just kind of like,
Um,
especially not being able to see people again and at these tournaments, or
yeah, I think that's been rough for all parties involved. I don't think anyone's going to say it's better. But mine's been all right overall. I know a good amount of people actually, I will say quit, and I'll say that in quotation marks from the scene because they didn't want to play online events, but then say they'll come back for offline. So I think it's an issue for a lot of people. But mine's been relatively okay. I've just been kind of working, honestly.
so it's just been normal. It's nothing kind of you just want to get back to it. Just get back to these meeting people. I think everybody wants to get back to the kind of mean
Yeah, everyone just
competing
wants to
again.
get back to compete, live their lives, etc.
Yeah. Actually, just curious, since you're talking about COVID and all that, did you get the vaccine? Kind of off topic.
I got the first shot, and I get my second one next week.
Which one?
I got Pfizer. I got Pfizer getting up in here.
Oh, okay, just curious. So next question. Fighting games like so these probably heard of, probably not. I had to research these.
Mm-hmm.
These are kind of new fighting games. So fighting games like Virtua Fighter X Esport. I don't know. Research this. So whatever fighting games will be coming up in the next coming years. Tekken X, Street Fighter, and Guilty Gear Strive. I don't are supposed to be released in 2021's and
Yeah.
/2022. Could these new titles be beneficial in regrowing the fighting game community that has relied on nostalgia for a long time, while also bringing in new people casually and competitively?
Yeah, I think new games are always going to bring in new people. Guilty Gear Strive specifically, I think, is going to unite the fighting game community like no other game has. Because the fighting game community is basically there's traditional fighting games and then there's the Smash like games, the platform fighters. There's a bit of a divide. FGC fans don't normally love our games. We don't usually love their games. that changed with Guilty Gear Strive. People from both scenes are really, really excited about the game. So I think it'll unify the communities, but I also think it's just bringing a lot of casual interest. I think new kind of titles are always going to help grow the scene because you're gonna get new people, and then you're gonna bring old people back. It can only really seek to improve.
Actually, since you're talking about the uniting, kind of how does Guilty Gear Strive help on that?
It's there's nothing they're doing particularly different. It's just every people like the game. It's really that simple.
What makes it unique, like the other, like just say Smash,
It's
Tekken?
very, very fast paced. It is extremely fast paced. A full best of three, I think, takes no longer than like 5 to 7 minutes. For
Best of
Smash,
Wait,
a best of three, the first to two, if you want to put it that way.
okay. Wait,
If
how's the first to two work? Just kind of.
how many games? So, like,
So,
I sit down and I play a round of Smash, or a round of Guilty Gear in this case. In Smash, I'm trying to take your stocks before you take mine. In Guilty Gear, there's rounds. I'm trying to win 3 rounds before you win 3 rounds.
oh,
And
so
then you play each of individual like game is how you count it in sets.
just
In Smash, a best of 3 usually takes 15 minutes, like 10 to 15. In Guilty Gear, it takes 5 to 7. So it's so fast paced.
So they said best of three. So and that's you got to win two out of those 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
How many rounds are in each game? Like how many times do you have to kill? I'm probably gonna say kill here. I don't knock that.
Yeah,
I
know you mean.
knock down an opponent before you win the game.
Well, in those things, it's usually the rounds are usually either first to 2 or first to 3.
Okay.
So it's like the game counts the rounds itself. So when the game itself ends and you go back to the select screen, that's the easy way to say is that's one game. And then you go for the next game in the set.
Okay, just curious. I'm probably still confused, but I don't want to be stuck in it for a long time. I honestly think you're still gonna have to rely on nostalgia because again, the passion has stuck for many years on Super Smash. It has a deep scene. I don't know if you're gonna see many people switch from it. Capcom, well, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, like they're just. I think the Tekken and Street Fighter could be interesting. Because again, it's involvement that's probably going to help improve the Tekken scene where they got a lot of complaints. I think maybe it's kind of hard to do in Mortal Kombat and Streets. There's probably other games I probably missed. But it's Super Smash. It's just gonna. I mean, just the Tekken scene could have the biggest advantage because it's just involvement. They know how to play it. But if you kind of use like Super Smash, you're still gonna kind of stick with whatever you got and you try to transition. So actually, one thing I want to ask about this: do people usually just just for example, Hungry Box only competes in Super Smash? Is that right? Kind of, you just focus on that game, or does he
plays Melee and he also plays Ultimate. 2 different games.
Oh, well, they both come from the Super Smash series.
Yeah, same.
So do they ever? Is it common that we see people kind of competing, like just say they like Hungry Box? We'll just go for example. Although it's not happening with him. So Hungry Box competes in Smash and Melee, but does he also compete in a game like Tekken or like a Mortal Kombat game?
There's some overlap. I wouldn't say it's super common. I think the most high profile example is probably Leffen, who he's been a top player in Ultimate and Melee, which is already rare to be a very good player in both games, but he's also a top player in Dragon Ball FighterZ.
Oh, I forgot about that game.
Yeah, and then I mean there's Sonic Fox, who does, literally everything. He tries every single game pretty much. I would say within the FGC it's more common. Within Smash it's not as common. Because the FGC, the traditional fighters, they have their notable differences, but they have more similarities than compared to Smash. So Smash scene kind of historically stays in their own lane. Traditional FGC kind of stays in their own lane.
Oh, I was just curious because because especially the all kind of fighting games is like can't be hard to learn a lot of just they'll probably have a lot of similar differences and similarities, but I thought they can probably overlap because it's kind of you're kind of still fighting.
Mm-hmm.
So next question is, this is going to relate to this. How do you feel? I researched this a long time ago. So how do you feel about the revamped Smash World Tour format?
Yeah.
And will this format inspire changes to the overall fighting game esports scene? Like, just doesn't revolve. Like, will this format be be evolved into Tekken, Dragonfall, Mortal Kombat, other fighting games, whenever they release in the future?
No, I don't think so. Um, so the revitalized format, you have to keep in mind, was designed exclusively for the online era.
Oh,
Because the original thing was that the Smash Bros. Tour was going to feature specific events, like specific regional events, and you get points for those events. So let's say take a tournament like Shine, the biggest tournament in the Northeast, pretty much, and they would feature that, and then they would also feature an event like what's that CEO in Florida. So that was the original format. The current format is just so they can get people from each part of the nation. Um, I think it could work for online qualifiers, but again, I think online doesn't have as much legitimacy, so it can't. I don't think it would really dictate discourse in any way, shape, or form.
Actually, before you kind of continue on, is there kind of cheating? Is there any cheating that has occurred ever since they switched online
Sometimes people
that you know
try.
about?
Sometimes people try a little bit. The main forms of things is that people will. So people will be playing a set, and then the website we use called Smash.gg. That's just for a lot of tournaments in general, not even just Smash or FGC.
Mhm.
It's used for Rocket League
Yeah, I
as
heard of
well.
it.
So what will happen is I'll go into a set and people will request a moderator, so I'll show up in there, and someone will claim they won when they didn't. And you know what I mean, there's methods to tell. What we use is Smash tags. Smash actually has an in-game system to tell when you've beaten a player in an arena. So we'll ask for pictures of their Smash tags. People try, but usually aren't very successful.
Oh, just so no one
It's not that it's
cheats with
not
like their characters or something like that.
well, no, you can't really. Like, there's
Oh,
not a way to do it
no one
because if
uses
you
exploits.
no, because if you mod your Switch for gameplay differences, you can't connect online.
Oh, that'll probably be a lot. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't expect. It's kind of hard to do with
you need to
console
be up to the
games.
current. Yeah, you need to be up to the current patch. So
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. But is there like any example? I'm kind of curious since we're kind of talking about it. Like any kind of examples of players doing it that you kind of know about in history?
Um. Honestly, no, not really, because it's not notable. It's not. It's never been anyone
No,
really
cheating
notable.
at tournaments. Cheating at
Oh,
tournaments or
cheating at
online. Yeah,
tournaments
let's not do that. They would probably do that. Like with the hacks or
offline,
just anything with cheating.
online or offline. I don't think there's much offline either, to be honest with you.
We'll do both if you know anything
I mean,
about it.
there's no, not really. Everything is like the only cases where it's kind of like that. Honestly, no. There's people try to break the rules every so often, but then it immediately gets caught. Like people, if you pause, you need to lose a stock, which is like you just need to lose a stock, which life. And really, is if things are reported to the TOs, then they're handled. Like I don't think we really have much of a cheating issue.
Oh,
Um,
just
yeah,
yeah, I probably didn't expect it that much, but because it's just kind of first thing you can play on the Switch. Well, I think playing Switch or whatever
yeah,
console, and it's really kind of not really high. Well, Switch is probably
yeah,
highly advanced, but not really kind of with the others. So I didn't
yeah.
probably expect that. So the last question I got for you is, what other initiatives need to happen for the to the fighting? Oh wait, sorry. Let me read the question. What other initiatives need to happen to possibly see a rebirth of the fighting game community, fighting game scene, to where it can become a tier 1 or 2 esport without controversy?
That controversy. A couple of things need to happen. I don't know if we're ever going to fully get there. From to be honest with you, one thing is that there needs to be a uniform body for Smash. I'll focus on the Smash for this section because FGC at large is a lot more complicated. I think
That's fine.
I think game by game is what you really need to do.
Yeah, it's
There
kind of
needs
hard
to
to
be
do.
a universal body in terms of bans. Everyone needs to follow the same thing. There needs to, all TOs need to agree on the same rule sets because we even run different stage lists from tournament to tournament. The rule set is not uniform. So that's level one. Other than that, there needs to be we honestly need large sponsors to get in. A big issue right now is there's a lack of money, and we can't really rely on Nintendo, because if we rely on Nintendo, then they won't run things the way they need to be done. They'll be focusing on their financial best interest, which is fair, but isn't really beneficial to the scene as a whole. So I
Nintendo
would
makes a
say,
lot of money off because the Mario's the kind of the Mario any like I don't know any game Mario whatever. I'm trying to come up with something, but I'm not making any sense.
it's all
Like
good.
Super Smash, that's one of the most popular games on
Yeah,
Nintendo.
but
So I don't know.
they know that the scene will keep on trying to make it work, and they'll keep making money, and they don't have to invest
You
because
don't have to supply the problem. I don't know why they're not supplying any of it. Like how much
yeah,
do you, like they're probably $1 billion company. Even if it's like well, just say for example, I'm gonna kind of go with like I specialize in Call of Duty.
mhm,
The CDL so Call of Duty League, they have $5 million already set up. They had the season set up, $5 million from Activision. So that's the main
yeah,
company, and then they probably got I think 500K for the challenger scene, which is the amateur scene, like
yeah,
or maybe $1 million. So that's $6 million. That's not a lot. Activision makes $1 billion. Nintendo, I don't know, they probably make some
yeah.
around there too.
This just isn't their priority. They've done some stuff with like tournaments in the past, but they always put a casual spin on it. I think it goes back to players are not playing the game the way Nintendo envisioned it,
How does
and they
Nintendo? Actually, you mentioned many times. How does Nintendo envision this shit?
ca- a more casual rule set. All stages, hazards on, a bunch of items. The way Ultimate does it, we try to in Melee as well. We try to strip away any unfair advantages that are just like wacky stages, randomly generating items. So Nintendo views as much of more of a party game, casual experience. We have tried to make something that's not intended to be competitive, and they don't like that, and they don't really support it.
I feel like you could. I feel like Nintendo has to put some money, even if it's like $1 million or $2 million, just
Well, the thing
for.
is, when they put in the money in the past, they add restrictions. So
Oh yeah,
now at this point, it's more worth it for tournaments just not to be partnered with Nintendo and not have to deal with them, and that's sad. But that's the kind of reality we live in now.
I
It's
remember. Actually, I remember this. Nintendo, they had a big tournament. I think in Super Smash or Melee, and
Mhm.
they canceled they didn't even live stream it, or they canceled the finals. I don't remember, but I think it happened last year or 2 years ago.
Not that I can remember off the top of my head, but I mean, they've tried to do that for multiple tournaments. They tried to do it with MLG Melee a while back. They tried to do it with Evo as well. Evo 2013, I believe. They don't like things being they like doing things on their own terms, which is a business is understandable, but it's not very conducive to growing a healthy grassroots community. And they've shown they're not willing to make it a kind of a more official, I want to say corporate run esport league. So they don't let us do it our own way, and they won't do it themselves. So we're kind of that's why there's kind of anti-Nintendo sentiments within the community, I would say.
Yeah. What was actually, I don't know if you know, just curious. Do you know what the biggest sponsor was that supported any of these fighting game tournaments that you know of? Like
No, but
company?
I think going forward, it's probably going to be Sony with
Oh,
their acquisition of Evo. I would imagine. I mean, there's individual ones, right? It's not. I can't think of one who like is doing everything. It's like okay, HyperX will put some money in here. Okay, Monster, Red Bull. Red Bull is probably honest. I think if I had to name one, it'd probably be Red Bull. But I can't think of a single one they're doing. They just do a lot of small ones, you know.
so
And
yeah, they do put money, but maybe not
yeah.
enough.
Well, it's not that they're not doing enough. They're doing what they can, but they're not creating like a massive tournament circuit, you know? They're the side sponsor for a lot of events,
Yeah,
but not the main sponsor.
yeah. So that's actually any other initiatives that you want to notice out that can make this kind of like was I said tier one or tier two. That's kind of like confusing. Like a top 10, top five, top 10 esport game
Mhm.
I've seen, whatever.
Um yeah, I think I highlighted the main things. The scene needs more money and we need uniformity. Without those two, it's not possible.
Makes sense. So thanks. So we talked about the main topic. Can FGC be reborn? So for the closing topic, we mentioned at the starts before we talked about before we went on the podcast.
Mhm.
So you said you did not get paid. I kind of want, if I don't know how much you can disclose that, but it'd probably be an
Yeah,
interesting
we
story.
can talk about it. Talk about it
Uh,
briefly. It's an ongoing thing. So I was signed on to this project called Smashable by Thunder Gaming. Thunder Gaming has a reputation in the past of not fully paying people out or doing things in a
I heard that, or I heard that organization.
yeah, they're not seen in a very positive light. Me and some other people, I'm not gonna call them out. We were not fully paid for the project. It was a 6 month long project. Last time I got paid was January. And they paid me late more than once, and they still owe me two full payments. It happens sometimes, the FGC, but people will announce an event, run the event, and then they'll just disappear into thin air, and people don't get paid. I think that inhibits growth, but it's not a consistent thing. It happens every once in a while, and it's unfortunately happening with Thunder. But yeah, it's just, I think that, I mean, I've mentioned this time and time again in this podcast, right?
Yeah.
It's an issue of there's no oversight, so there's no one really who can hold anyone accountable. It's just a community at large, and because of that, it's not like I'm running a tournament for Nintendo. Obviously, Nintendo's going to pay me when it's their game. It's a lot of individual companies. So I think that's the main thing. It happens from time to time, like I said, but I don't think it's widespread.
Okay, just curious, and that is interesting. There's many cases of people where people haven't got paid on esports. That's
Mhm.
happened a lot in esports. So, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Mhm.
As all you guys who are going to watch us on YouTube, I'm back. Hopefully over the summer we're going to get many more and more podcasts. I have a couple
Mhm.
of topics lined up that don't as I think I got like about 3 lined up that I want to do. Probably hopefully more so we can get to we're on episode 46. Hopefully
Mhm.
we'll reach 50 by June or July. So yeah.
Mhm.
Do you want to give any shout outs to anyone before we end it off here?
Um, no, I mean, if you're interested in what I do, you can follow my social media, Grayola with 2 A's. If you're interested in Smash, interested in stuff, esports. Other than that, I run Rise underscore tournament on Twitter, and then I'm also part of at Collision Smash, which is the organization I've recently joined and I work with.
Okay. Then well
So yeah, that's it for me.
thank you for coming on the show. Thank you guys viewers who watch the podcast. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Oh crap.